Whether you're Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Litvish, Hasidish, Yemenite, or any other type of Jew, everyone has heard about the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, and needless to say, the destruction of the Holocaust. But in fact, there are common denominators, not only between those two disasters, those two Holocausts, but also between all of the Holocaust, all of the disasters that the Jewish people have ever had. A common denominator that continues to repeat itself from generation to generation. And while most people think that anti-Semitism perhaps began right before the Holocaust, the truth is that you look at history, is that things were very different than most people know. And the reason why this is important is because it's happening again. Tonight's lecture is going to perhaps educate you about who you really are and what you need to know about who you are. It's an interesting lecture full of history, full of information, and some guidance of how to survive during these times. We've survived Paro, we've survived Hitler, but not all of us are going to survive what's coming. Enjoy the lecture, share it, and make sure you're holy. B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We are back here on our Tuesday night, but in preparation for the big day of Tisha B'Av, starting tomorrow night, we figured that instead of doing our typical Jewish intimacy series, we're going to go over some things that are extremely important. At first, we're going to go over a few laws for the Tisha B'Av day. And then after that, we're going to go into a little bit of history and try to figure out what's going on in the world today in comparison to what happened over the last couple of 100 years. Of course, everyone has heard about the Holocaust. Many people have discussed it, myself included. But really, there is a lot of history that most people are simply not aware of. In fact, while many people like to scream out Mashiach now and to the Moshiach will come, and thinking that Mashiach is like some type of lotto ticket that is going to save everyone, it's very important for us to know where we were, compare it to where we are right now, while we are mourning again on Tisha B'Av, this horrific day throughout all of Jewish history. Quite frankly, to see if we're repeating the same mistakes that we've made in the past as a people. Mistakes in business, mistakes in behavior, mistakes in spirituality, and otherwise. But first and foremost, we have to say the typical started, which is the shiur is going to be for the refuah shlema and hatzlacha rabah for Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Tinok ben Sarah, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Avi Mori David ben Esriya, Imi Morati Doris bat Jora, Sarah bat Esther, and also couple of anonymous sponsors. Anyone that wants to sponsor our lectures and either be anonymous or named in the beginning of the lectures, or if you want your name on the screen, there's different opportunities for sponsorship on our website, bezrathashem.org. Over there you could donate, over there you could sponsor, you could do a lot of different things, and of course anyone that wants some copies of our new books, whether it's Rav Ephraim's new book that just hit the market last week, which Baruch Hashem has some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, or my book. These are in Hebrew only, but we also have USBs that are in English lectures and films. So these things are available for free if you go to the Kiruv store that we have, bhkiruv.org. So with that being said, we're going to go into a few laws. I know that some of you that may be a little newer than others, the laws are not necessarily your forte, so it's good to be reminded of what we need to do tomorrow night. So tomorrow night begins Tisha B'Av. as the Sefer Bereshit and the beginning of the Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu, aside from creating the world, he also created time, and he created the 24-hour system, of course. And for the Jewish people, a new day begins at night. So that's why the holidays or Shabbat begin at night. As the Torah says in every verse, each time Hashem completed a day, Vayi erev vayi boker yom rishon, vayi erev vayi boker yom sheni. It was night, it was day. First day, it was night, it was day. Second day, meaning that the day does not begin during the day, but rather at night. So the actual day of Tisha B'Av begins at night, and that's when we begin the mourning. Now, before Tisha B'Av, everybody obviously has to eat, because Tisha B'Av is one of the main fasts for the Jewish people. It's an obligatory fast. It's not a fast that you could just simply skip on. If you're healthy and you're Jewish, you must fast. If you are not Jewish, obviously you do not have to fast. If you want to fast, you can. Certainly, if you're in the process of conversion, you should fast and break it by one act, like we do you do on Shabbat until you complete your conversion. But aside from the fasting, there's also 5 categories of abstinence during Tisha B'Av. Again, these laws came from the laws of mourning. When somebody has an immediate relative die, whether it's a mother, father, a spouse, a child, a brother or sister, they have to mourn. There's a shiva. And these laws, in essence, of Tisha B'Av, unlike Yom Kippur, where it's also a fast day, but Yom Kippur is actually a holy celebratory day, even though we fast. It's just another opportunity to connect to Hashem. The fast of Tisha B'Av is a fast of mourning. And it's an obligatory fast for all Jews, unless you are either ill, pregnant, and incapable of actually fasting, or you just gave birth within the last 30 days. Again, these are, of course, you have to ask your rabbi to see where you stand with these particular situations, or if you're an elderly. Also, again, if you're incapable of fasting for medical reasons, then there's an exemption for that. But everybody else that is healthy must fast. Now, there are 5 categories of abstinence that must be observed. So you're not allowed to eat, you're not allowed to drink, you're not allowed to bathe or wash yourself. So this means that during the morning, when you wake up in the morning, as we traditionally do netilat yadayim with a blessing, your netilat yadayim, where you wash your hands in the morning, you only wash up to the knuckles, and then do a blessing. You don't wash more than that. After any time a person goes to the bathroom, again, they only wash up to the knuckles. They don't wash beyond that, but with no blessing during the rest of the day. There's obviously no eating, so therefore there's no bread washing. There's also a prohibition from rubbing a person's body with any types of oils and lotions. So this is important to know. But Rav Oirbach actually paskins that spray deodorant is allowed. The one that you spray is allowed, but not, obviously perfume is not allowed. But the deodorant that is a stick is not allowed. But anything that's a oil or a lotion that you rub on yourself is not allowed. Wearing leather shoes is forbidden as well. And needless to say, marital relations are forbidden. You actually have to consider as if your wife is nida. So you're not allowed to sleep in the same bed. Which also, since we're mentioning the bed, the mattresses have to be put on the floor for you to sleep on the mattress on the floor. And throughout the night and up to the afternoon, you have to either sit on the floor or on a chair that's 27 centimeters from the ground. So it's a very low chair, similar to like those beach chairs that are very low to the ground. In so many words, uncomfortable. Now, as far as learning Torah on Tisha B'Av, learning Torah on Tisha B'Av is forbidden unless it's specific Torah that is either the book of Job, which obviously is full of sorrow and agony and mourning, the Eicha, which in English is Lamentations, or the commentary on those two, or the laws of Avelut, of laws of mourning, or Musar. Musar, in order to help you and to help all of us do tshuva. Those are the things that are allowed because the rest of the Torah is something that gladdens the heart, and this is certainly not something that you're supposed to do when you're mourning. Also, you're allowed to learn about the prophecies and different midrashim regarding the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, the temple, from the book of Jeremiah. Also the portions of the Midrash and the Talmud regarding the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. Anything relating to the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, you're allowed to learn. Now, the fast itself begins at sunset. So today there is applications on anybody that has a smartphone or internet. You could see the exact time according to your zip code of when the fast begins. Of course, if you're in a Jewish community, the local rabbi will let people know typically of when it begins, but don't depend on anybody. Everybody's responsible for themselves. Now, a person is not allowed to wash their body on Tisha B'Av, not with cold water or with hot water. This is not just the entire body, this is even partially, even washing your entire hand or face. So in the morning, when one of the suggestions the Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef brings as far as people that have want to wash their face in the morning, and obviously they can't. So when you wash your fingers in the morning, before you wipe your hands, take the water that's on your fingers and you can put it in your eyes to rub take away the crust that's on your eyes, if you have any. Brushing teeth is also not allowed unless somebody has a serious problem and they're going to suffer, extremely suffer as a result of not brushing their teeth. But again, this is not the time to be lenient. A new bride, a woman that has been gotten married over the last 30 days, and therefore the marriage is new, she's actually allowed to wash her face because it's a particular time that she doesn't want, obviously, to be ugly in her husband's eyes, and therefore there's a leniency for a newly married bride. As far as working is not allowed on Tisha B'Av. In regards to exemption from the fast, just because you're exempt from the fast doesn't mean that you're allowed to do everything else. Again, everything is a case-by-case basis. A person needs to know where they stand. If a person is ill, like they're bedridden, and even if it's not life-threatening, but they're bedridden, they're exempt from fasting on Tisha B'Av. If a person has any type of doubts, they obviously have to consult not only with their doctor, but also with a halachic authority. If you simply have pain, that's headaches and things of that nature, that's not enough to be exempt from the fast. If someone is elderly and fasting would weaken them and could put them in a danger, then they're exempt from the fast. If a woman has given birth in the past 7 days, she's exempt from the fast. If she's given birth more than 7 days, but less than within 30 days, there are some poskim that are stringent and say that she should fast, or at the very least try. But there are some poskim that say that she doesn't need to fast. Rav Ovadia paskins that a woman that's within 30 days is exempt from fasting. The same applies to a woman who, chas v'shalom, has miscarried. In the past 40 days, in the past 30 days, if she was carrying the baby for 40 days or more, then it's considered a miscarry according to halacha, and therefore she is treated as if she has given birth, meaning that she's exempt from fasting. Now, anyone that's exempt from fasting on Tisha B'Av due to illness or the other circumstances that we've mentioned, they're allowed to eat and drink regularly, but if it's a pregnant or a nursing mother, they're exempt from other fasts, but they're obligated to fast on Tisha B'Av. So if you're nursing or you're pregnant, you're obligated to fast on Tisha B'Av, unless the fast will make them very sick. Meaning, you can start fasting if you're seeing yourself start, getting dizzy and it becomes a dangerous situation. Then certainly you're allowed to eat. Children that are below the age of 13 for boys and 12 for girls do not need to fast at all. There's no need for them to fast. If they want to fast for a half hour or for an hour, just for the sake of chinuch, it's allowed, but it's absolutely not necessary. Wearing leather shoes is forbidden on Tisha B'Av. Leather shoes, leather sneakers, this is not allowed. But usually most people, the guys spend most of the day in the synagogue, or at the very least, the first part of the night and the afternoon, morning to afternoon. And typically most of the guys are wearing flip-flops and Crocs or something similar to that. That's not a problem, even though that's more comfortable. The poskim say that there's no prohibition for wearing that. The only prohibition is wearing leather shoes. Now, in regards to the day itself, a person needs to make sure this is certainly not a day to hang out with your friends, to chit-chat, to waste your time, to joke around, to tell jokes. It's a day of mourning. A person really needs to do whatever they can to get themselves to the point where they're actually feeling the destruction. They're feeling the disaster. And I know that people that are either ignorant to Judaism or simply unaware because they're new, to get to a point of crying is a world away from them. But I think with enough learning that we'll do today, B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow as well, and some of the other lectures that I've done over the years about the topic, there are many lectures that we've done over the years. I highly recommend you watch all of them because they simply, each one of them is very different with new content, which is what we're going to try to do, B'ezrat Hashem, today as well. There's a lot of reason to mourn. Now, especially when a person becomes more and more aware of the comparison of what happened in the past to what is actually happening today, which is what we're going to talk about. Now, after the fast begins, you're going to have people that live in the Jewish communities. You're going to go to the synagogue. There is the service is part after the Arvit. There's going to be the Kinnot. Everybody sits on the floor. There's some crying, and then they go over. They read out loud the Megillat Eicha, the Book of Lamentations, while everybody is either sitting in very low chairs, like stools, very low stools or chairs, or they're on the floor itself. Sometimes people turn over the chairs, so they just, in essence, use the chairs as something to sit on instead of sitting on the floor. I never found out to be any more comfortable than sitting on the floor, and both are different forms of suffering. But that's sitting on the floor ends at around the afternoon the following day. around the afternoon of the after day, then you're allowed to start sitting in the on chairs. But the fast ends, at night. So again, look at the time zones, the clocks exactly of when the fast begins and ends in your community, in wherever you live. But the key is to make sure that the fast is something that you take seriously, because anyone that doesn't mourn for the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, as the prophet Isaiah mentioned, that there's the mourning and then there's obviously the celebration. The Chachamim from there have taken, whether it's the Chachamim in the Gemara or the Arizal or different Chachamim throughout all of the ages, have agreed that anyone who doesn't mourn the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash is not going to see the rebuilding of the Bet HaMikdash. And needless to say, if a person does not, breaks the fast, if they don't fast on Tisha B'Av, then they lose their, they lose a lot. They get punished severely. It's a very big sin, but also they lose their ability to be resurrected to see the rebuilding of the Bet HaMikdash. So at night you have the Kinnot. Usually the services are very long because there's the reading of the book of Eicha, there's the Kinnot, there's the prayer. In some communities it could start at 8 and finish around midnight. There is usually many Shiurim, in all Jewish communities. There's quite a few online. Be'ezrat Hashem, we plan on giving one as well, as we have in the previous years. If Hashem gives us the strength, we'll do it as well. But after that, people, go home and, finish off the day. Now, there's a Machloket in regards to Tikkun Chatzot. Some Chachamim say that since we've already mourned for the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash already, there's no need to do Tikkun Chatzot. Some Chachamim, like the Chida, say that you can do Tikkun Chatzot. Again, that's up to you, one way or the other. As far as the next day, there's the morning service, and in most communities today, the people put on the Tefillin and Talit in the morning, and even though in the past, according to the Shulchan Aruch, Tefillin should not be laid in the morning. It should be done in the either at home before you go to shul or in the Minchah service. But today, the custom has changed, and simply in most communities, everyone puts on Tefillin in the morning. Rabbi Vadia says there's no need to put on the Tefillin again, in the afternoon if you've already done it in the morning. If you put on, both Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, both are done again in the morning. So with that, you have the morning service. Then, you come back for, usually there is a break. Then typically, again, there are different shiurim, different lectures in the communities, online and different places that you can watch to keep the mood of the day in line with where you need to be. And then there's the afternoon service, which is Minchah. And typically they start Minchah and they continue until the fast is done. Now, as far as Sephardim, we don't go back to eating meat until the 10th of Av. So unlike our brothers, the Ashkenazim, that eat meat already on the at night after Tisha B'Av is complete, the Sephardim keep it until the 10th of Av, and the 10th of Av in this year happens to be Shabbat. So you go back to eating meat on Shabbat, on Friday night. Now, as far as the what to do with with the kids, it's typically women don't go to synagogue on Tisha B'Av, not because they're not allowed, but simply because they have to watch the kids. You don't go to school that day. You can, but usually there's no school, there's no Jewish school during those days. If your kids go to public school, then they're not allowed to go to public school ever, not just on Tisha B'Av, because it's simply a tragedy to have kids go to public school. Quite frankly, both for Jews and Gentiles shouldn't go to public school, but unfortunately, There are not many choices for the Gentiles unless they have money to go to private school or private tutoring. For Jewish people, we have the private school, which is the yeshiva. Although they're expensive, it's worth every single penny if you're not able to have a private tutor or simply do homeschooling. But needless to say, this is not just on Tisha B'Av, this is throughout all of the year. Now, the mothers typically have to take care of the kids, and during Tisha B'Av, you have to do whatever you can to keep the kids busy, and it's highly recommended for you to teach your kids about the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. There are endless amount of books for children about Tisha B'Av, about the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. So this certainly is something that you should teach them about throughout the day. There's obviously many videos about it. There's different shows, all types of things that you could learn about the topic with the kids. Keep them busy. One custom that I learned from my Rav that I think is certainly a worthwhile custom for anybody that's healthy and can do it. It's not an obligation at all. But after the afternoon, where it's let's say the time where you're allowed to sit down on chairs again, so let's just call it 1 o'clock in the afternoon, since tradition has told us to make sure not at that time to start uplifting people and start teaching about the ultimate redemption, Moshiach coming, and all the good things that will eventually happen, one of the things we learn is that Moshiach was born on Tisha B'Av. So it's customary for people to actually start preparing for the Mashiach. And one of the things that I learned from Rabbi Ephraim is actually that the Rabbanit cleans the whole house. They wash the floors, they clean the house spotless on starting the afternoon. In essence, preparing for the Mashiach to arrive. And and this is something that certainly, if you're able to do it, do it. Obviously, it's usually something that a woman that is not fasting is able to do, because either she just gave birth or something like that. But again, sometimes women that are fasting have a lot of strength. They're, especially when it comes to mitzvot, and they're looking for the opportunity to do another mesirut nefesh to show Hashem that we love Him and that we want the Mashiach to come. They can do it. But again, if you can't do it, if it's too hard, then there's no obligation to do this. It's just simply a good custom. Involving the kids in cleaning the house is also a very good thing. It's good for chinuch. It's good to get them again on the same page of the enormity of the day. So with that, I think we more or less covered Tisha B'Av. Now, today, it's really a mystery how there is many people in the Jewish world that are really ignorant about Torah. They don't really know very much. Sometimes they pretend to know a lot. Sometimes they're even rabbis. And they tell people to, look forward to the Mashiach. They have all types of speeches about Mashiach. They say Mashiach is in the air as if it's some type of perfume. They say Mashiach is coming now, and they're excited for it, while they are sinning the very same sins that led to the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. Unfortunately, it's something that is not done in hiding. Usually, the more ignorant, the more arrogant they are. And this Rasha Modi that I spoke about recently, this comedian, recently had some type of show that somebody showed me where he is talking to a bunch of other liberal Jews that are completely desecrating the name of God, insulting Judaism, Orthodox Judaism from all corners. And he, in so many words, says, "I'll paskin for you," as if he's the Maran, he's the Rav over there. And he says, "Listen, there's no hell in Judaism. All you got to do is just be a good person. In so many words, don't kill people. and say give some tzedakah, say some blessings. That's it. If you also want to learn Torah, that's a plus, but that's it. But the biggest thing of all is to yearn for Mashiach to come. In so many words, in a matter of like literally 10 seconds, he canceled the entire Torah. He canceled the entire Torah. And the fact that his behavior is an abomination and against the Torah in all aspects, that is completely disregarded. In fact, the whole show is about the acts of abomination according to the Torah. But again, yeshivot and synagogues and Jewish communities continue to invite him and people like him to make us laugh, to make the community laugh. But in reality, the Satan is laughing at all of us. So the question is this something new? This whole messianic ideology that cancels the Torah at the same time. Of course, we're all supposed to await the Moshiach, yearn for the Moshiach, prepare for the Moshiach, but not by canceling the Torah. The opposite. Yearning for Moshiach, expecting the Moshiach, means that every single day, each and every single one of us, whether you are from birth, or you're newly converted, or you're a Baal Tshuva, or whatever you are, it's doing Tshuva every single day. That's yearning for Mashiach. Helping other Jews get closer to God, that's yearning for Mashiach. Not just simply saying Mashiach now and singing a bunch of songs. It's a yearning for Mashiach, and expecting the Mashiach means that you are preparing yourself spiritually. Many times people think, no, I'm preparing for Mashiach. I just bought a house in Israel. There's no book in the world that's going to tell you that preparing for Mashiach means you need to buy a house in Israel. Preparing for Mashiach has nothing to do with money. Oh, no, I'm preparing for Mashiach. I sing songs at least once a day. There's no book in the world that Chachamim have written that says that preparing for Mashiach requires you to sing Mashiach now. No book. Now, unfortunately today, people have created a new religion. And you could even call it the Mashiach religion. Now, of course, they're under the auspices of different forms of orthodoxy, but I can assure you this has nothing to do with Orthodox Judaism. But more than anything else, we have to understand where we were and, what happened. What happened on this day, over the years. Of course, we know it all begins with the sin of the Meraglim, the spies that were, Moshe Rabbeinu sent after the request of the people. They wanted to go and spy out the land of Israel, and then they, instead of reporting what was actually there, they reported bad things about Israel, and that began the, turning this day into a day of mourning. Throughout all of history, the biggest tragedies that have happened to Am Yisrael have happened during this day, and it's not a coincidence. You have the destruction of the first Bet HaMikdash, where literally millions upon millions of people were murdered in cold blood, happened on Tisha B'Av in the first Bet HaMikdash destruction. The second Bet HaMikdash destruction happened also on Tisha B'Av. Spanish Inquisition, Tisha B'Av. Major key days during the Holocaust, also Tisha B'Av. Different tragedies have happened on Tisha B'Av, and in fact, one of the things that we see in the Torah is that this has been really not just a common day where disaster strikes on that day, but before that disaster strikes, there's a certain behavior. There's a certain thing that happens. There's a certain thing that we do that lead Hashem to, in essence, use this as the solution. Now, in the world of today, where people think that a YouTube subscribers means the more YouTube subscribers you have, the more righteous you are and the smarter you are, many people are falling into the trap of different people that call themselves rabbis and tell you all types of things like God needs you and all other forms of heresy. A recent shiur by Rav Meir Eliyahu, one of the Geonim in our generation, he brought some some of the words of the sages that are said everywhere, but he put it in a really good perspective in Parashat Dvarim, and he says, look at how Hashem brought us the salvation in the past, and then you'll understand some of the ways of Hashem. It'll also address this issue. Moshe Rabbeinu did not want to be the Mashiach. He did not want to be the Redeemer. He didn't have the confidence in himself that he is fit for this job. And more than anything else, he says, I'm a terrible speaker. He has a speech impediment. He was both a stutterer and a stammer. Part of it was because of him putting the coal in his mouth when he was a little boy, with that whole event that happened where he was going to grab the crown, the golden crown of Paro, but the angel was sent to move his hand to grab the coals, and as a reflex, he put his hand in his mouth, but there was still a piece of coal in his hand, and he burned his tongue. So Moshe Rabbeinu, the ultimate redeemer, did not want to be a redeemer. Part of it was because he had a speech impediment. And of course, we see in Parashat Dvarim, Ele Advarim. He says all of these things, meaning that Moshe Rabbeinu became the ultimate speaker. Why did Hashem choose Moshe Rabbeinu as the speaker to Am Yisrael, to teach us the Torah, to bring us all of the laws, when he's in essence a terrible speaker and not quite fit according to his resume for the job? In order to make sure that you realize that it's not somebody that thinks that they are fit, but rather who Hashem picks. Mostly because if Hashem would have brought a good speaker, let's say like Korach, the politician, Korach was a fantastic speaker. Korach convinced 250 of the biggest rabbis in the world to go against Moshe Rabbeinu. He was not only wealthy, he was a very charismatic person. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no, I'm not going to bring you a charismatic person. I'm going to give you someone with a speech impediment, so you don't ever say that Moshe Rabbeinu convinced millions of people to follow God. But rather, the words themselves, the events themselves, God himself was what was the convincing part. And so, first, HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows us that the salvation does not come from what makes sense. Secondly, HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose the Jewish people, but he didn't choose the Jewish people when they were at their height, when they were, the 12 tribes fighting warriors against all of the nations, when the wars of the 12 tribes against the Canaanite nations, that were literally destroying giants as if they were little cockroaches. No, Hashem didn't choose them then. He chose them when they were in Egypt, slaves, being defiled, being literally murdered, being destroyed on a daily basis, where Paro was murdering 300 babies every single day just to take their blood and bathe in it, because his necromancers told him that the blood of the Jewish kids is good for the skin disease that he had. So these very same people that had their kids murdered left and right, either in the morning for the bath of Paro, or because they didn't reach their quota and therefore they put their kids in there to replace the stones. All types of horrific things that happened to the Jewish people. They became slaves that worse than any other people in history, to the point where they no longer saw themselves as anything but slaves. So when Moshe Rabbeinu came to redeem them, they didn't understand, what is he talking about? Us being redeemed, us not being slaves, it didn't make any sense. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose us as slaves. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu choose us as slaves and not when we were doing really well? Very simple. To make sure that we know forever and more that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not need us. Does not need us. He is the one that lifted us up from nothing. We were nothing. We were zero. We were below zero. We were slaves. We were murdered. Literally tortured. Shlomit Bat Divri was raped by one of these Egyptians. Horrible things happened to Am Yisrael in Egypt. Countless people were killed. That's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you're my chosen people. So to make sure that you never say, oh, they were really, really good, they were amazing, they were righteous, they were perfect, they were the leaders, and then Hashem chose them, so maybe he needs them because they're so good. No, Dafka, he chose them when they were slaves and lifted them up from the ground, from dirt, in order for us to remember 3,334 years later that Hashem does not need us. So if some old man with a really long white beard pretending to be a philosopher / rabbi tells you God needs you, go bring him this. And this is mentioned in countless places in the Midrash, in the Gemara, by Chazal. It's literally all over the place. A person needs to know these things. Why? Because the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says in the before Moshiach comes, we are going to reach the 50th level of Tum'ah. What's the 50th level of Tum'ah? Heresy. Heresy is the 50th level of Tum'ah, meaning heresy is going to be everywhere. People are going to distort the Torah. Some of them with beards, some of them without beards, some of them with podcasts and a bunch of questionable guests, some of them with YouTube channels, some of them with big congregations in rich neighborhoods. All types of heretics are going to come. And it's important for a person to know that they are either going to be a victim as a result of their own ignorance, or they're going to prosper as a result of their own acquiring of knowledge. So here we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need us, he chose us, but then he almost destroyed us. Why? Why almost destroy us? What happened? What happened that this had to happen? Now, we know that in the first Bet HaMikdash, Am Yisrael made the 3 cardinal sins. Immorality, which includes wasting seed, LGBTQ, intermarriage, these types of things, as well as murder and idolatry. Now, in the second Bet HaMikdash, many people like to quote that sinat chinam, baseless hatred, as the reason for the destruction of the second Bet HaMikdash, but that's because either they are being lenient on the crowd, because the crowd is full of ignorant people that don't understand anything more than just simply not liking other people, or they have not learned Gemara, because the Gemara says that sinat chinam was not kepshuto, like as simple as you understand it, that you just didn't like anybody else. That wasn't exactly like you described them. You weren't. It wasn't because Jews turned into lehavdil, into a Hitler or something like that. Didn't like anybody that wasn't fit his description, that he himself didn't fit. No, sinat chinam. Rabbi Yonatan Eibeshitz, Alav Shalom, says sinat chinam is when Am Yisrael stopped rebuking. Why? Because as the Gemara in Masechet Chagigah says, Kadosh Baruch Hu said to the prophet Jeremiah, go check all of the Batei Knesset, go check all of the Bet Midrash. If there's anybody out there that's rebuking, I won't destroy the Bet Midrash, because at least if there's somebody that's rebuking, somebody that's telling people the truth, there's a way for people to come back to good. But if no one's rebuking, then I have to rebuke. And the way that Hashem rebukes is with destruction. So that was one form of sinat chinam. But the Gemara in Masechet Yomah and also in Masechet Shabbat says that there were certainly other sins as a result of lack of rebuke. That means that people started violating Shabbat and no one would tell them anything about it. People started doing all types of immoral things and no one said anything about it. So the sinat chinam was not that that was the only sin. It was the fact that this particular sin of lack of rebuke is, in essence, was the ultimate sin that allowed all of these other sins to continue. Now, before we get into what happened, in the Bet HaMikdash, we have to understand that the destruction that we're familiar with from the Holocaust, for example, is a destruction that is viewed by many as the worst thing that ever happened. If you start learning Gemara, you start learning some Midrashim, you start learning different parts of the Torah, you'll see that, in fact, the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash was much, much worse. But the reason why most people don't know this is because, and don't really cry on Tisha B'Av, is because the average person doesn't really understand what we're missing. Okay, so there's a building, just build another one. Arav Pinkus writes that an analogy of what happened, and this is written at the end of a book called Sparks of Majesty, and it's in the end of the book. And he says, imagine there was a Jewish community in Poland, and one day everybody woke up, and to their surprise, the sun didn't go up, the sun didn't rise. Everyone checked their clocks, their watches. They said, "Yo, sun's supposed to be up," but the sun didn't go up. They waited. Nothing happened. Few people talked to each other. No sun. Hours upon hours passed and no sun. Okay. They went back to sleep. Perhaps tomorrow will be another day. But the day passed and the sun still didn't come up. And this continued on for another day, another week. And after a couple of weeks, the people of the community said, okay, well, doesn't it look like the sun is gone? We have to pretty much start living life assuming that the sun will never go up again. So the community leaders gathered together and they said, listen, we have to make sure everybody is aware what's happening, but we have to obviously give people the ability to live. We have to build a factory for an unlimited supply of candles. So everybody is able to have candles at all times. Because as we know it, the sun is never going back up again. And so the construction began, and they built the factory really fast. Of course, everybody contributed, everybody built. The factory's up and running, and everyone started walking around with a candle at all times. And months passed, and people got used to this. They got used to the fact that there's just a candle, and that's where the light's coming from, and there's no sun. And months passed, and before you know it, years started passing. And everyone got so accustomed to it that this is simply what they thought is going to be forever. It got to a point where people started having kids that never saw the sun. And as those kids grew up, all they had is stories of how the sun used to look like, this big ball of fire that used to hang in the middle of the sky and light everything. And the kids loved the stories and everyone connected to it. But they truly couldn't comprehend what's there, but sure. Seems wonderful. And more time passed. And more kids were born. And those kids grew up. And they had kids. And the next generation of kids also didn't know what the sun looked like. And the stories had a little bit less effect on them. Until one day, the people announced a big announcement. Someone invented the electric bulb. And they brought this electric bulb to all of the different houses, and everyone was so excited about it. And they brought it to one house where there was a really old man in there. One of the few remaining people that actually saw the sun. And they wanted to see what the old man thinks of this. Look at this amazing invention. This must be what the sun looked like. And the old man nodded his head and started crying. I said, "Why are you crying, Grandpa?" He says, "No, it's not the sun." "What do you mean? But look how much light. The candle was only able to give us light just for us to see right in front of us, a couple of feet in front of us, where the light bulb lights up the whole room. Is it not even as good as the sun?" And the old man says, "No, it's nothing in comparison to the sun. The sun used to bring light, not just to the entire room, not just to the entire street, and not even to the entire town, but the entire world would have a light that's unmatched, even if you took all of the light bulbs in the world and combined them. It still would be unmatched to one ray from the real sun." And of course, this new generation had no idea what this old man is talking about. "What do you mean? How can it have so much?" Says Rav Pinkus, "This is where we are. This is where we are. In the beginning, the sages that saw the destruction cried so much that Rabban Gamliel cried so much that the eyelashes fell out. He cried so much that he had no eyelashes anymore. The sages literally would cry to the point where people would pass out from how much mourning. But as the generations continued, only hearing stories of the Bet HaMikdash and becoming more and more removed from the Bet HaMikdash, people started thinking, why are we mourning? What is it? Maybe we can have another little building. Look at how big this shul is. And look how big this yeshiva is. And look how great this tzaddik is. And the average person has no idea what the Bet HaMikdash even looked like in real life. Because in their imagination, it's just a building. Just like in the imagination of that story, it's just light. What's so different about some light bulbs versus the sun? The only way that we can truly understand what the Bet HaMikdash is if we cleave ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in His Torah. And the more we do it, the more HaKadosh Baruch Hu literally instills knowledge in us. You're not going to get the impression of what the Bet HaMikdash is from any cartoon or any picture. You're going to get it if HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that you can handle the information. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi used to offer 24 explanations to the verse that discusses the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. While Rabbi Yochanan used to offer 60 different explanations. This is not because Rabbi Yochanan was a greater scholar than Rabbi HaKadosh. Rather because Rabbi HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, he lived in a generation where some of his elderly congregants were survivors of the Bet HaMikdash Holocaust. Some of his congregants saw the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. And by the time he got to the 24 explanation of the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, the wailing, the crying from the congregants was so loud that no one could hear anything else that he's saying. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan lived at a time where none of the congregants saw the Bet HaMikdash. Now, when we cry over the Bet HaMikdash, we're not crying over a building. We're crying over a missed opportunity to be as close to Hashem as you can humanly be. Missed opportunity to be close to the Shekhinah. Missed opportunity to be able to do tshuva and clean yourself with one korban. Missed opportunities of literally living with holiness at all times. When Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania traveled to one of the large provinces in Rome, he was told that there was a beautiful looking child, Jewish child, in the prison. And in order to make sure that he knew this kid was worth it to do everything possible to release him, he asked questions to see if this kid was a child that knew Torah or a child that didn't know Torah. Where is this child? What kind of prisoner do you have here? And he found out that this kid was literally a Torah giant, already at a young age. And he did everything possible to release him, and this child actually became one of the Chachamim. Meaning that even the kids that lived at the time of the Beit HaMikdash were extraordinary Torah scholars that the world cannot even imagine today. The Yalkut Yosef section about Tisha B'Av has a introduction that talks about the different things relating to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. We're going to read a few things of what happened and also then go into a little bit of history. A very necessary history before we get to our conclusion of where we are today. One of the things that you hear on one end is that the Torah Giants at the time of the Beit HaMikdash were something you can't even understand. The Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. Some of them were prophets. They were able to talk to God on a regular basis. And God speaks back to them. Not like delusional people that, they think they're a Messiah just because they just completed their first book. Or they watched a bunch of videos on the internet. Or simply because they're so arrogant they think they're special. We had prophets walk among us. The average person cannot even understand the genius of the current Gdolei Ador, how much Torah the current Torah giants have. When I tell people that, Rav Ephraim completed Masechet Shabbat in 24 hours, like, are you sure? Like, that's not possible. They don't understand. What do you mean? He completed an entire tractate of Masechet Shabbat in 24 hours on Shabbat? Did he eat? Did he sleep? Did he breathe? When I tell you that B'ezrat Hashem in the next couple of months we're going to have almost 100 people that completed the entire Shas in a single year. Most of them have never completed the Shas even a single time. But they went into a program that we have, Baruch Hashem, they're all about to complete the Shas in a single year. The average person is like, what do you mean? I've been studying Torah for 20 years, never finished the Shas even once. How are they doing it in 1 year? When you tell people that Rabbi Ovadia, alav Shalom, knew 60,000 books by heart, word for word, more than any of us know any page of any book, including our Siddur. 60,000 pages by heart. He was tested by one of these journalists that tried to make a joke out of him, only to make a joke out of himself. When he realized that Rabbi Ovadia was not like a regular person. People have no concept of the giants of literally that are walking among us or were just around us a few years ago. So when I tell you that we had prophets walking in the streets, the prophet Isaiah, the prophet Jeremiah, the prophet Zechariah, Yechezkel, all types of prophets that saw extraordinary things in the heavens, saw things we cannot even explain in words. They walked among men. Little children, like this story that we just mentioned from the Gemara Masechet Gittin, knew more Torah than anybody in the world today. Little kids. So the question begs, if there were so many Torah giants, why didn't they use some of this Torah to stop the enemy? Because surely we all know the stories of when people wanted to attack Jewish people, either at the time of the Arizal, or the time of the Gaon Mivilna, or other Mekubalim and Tzaddikim, and a single Tzaddik would literally defeat anybody that's walking in our way. So surely if the Arizal was able to literally command angels to do whatever he wanted, and study with Eliyahu Navi on a regular basis, surely 1,500 years, 2,000 years before him, the prophets were able to do the same. The tzaddikim were able to do the same. So why didn't they do it? Why don't they just call one of these angels and tell him, listen, Gabriel, this Nebuchadnezzar, destroy him for me. Do me a favor. Just this afternoon. Finish it quickly because I have a shiur coming up. And that, Rabotai, is a legitimate question. But it's not a new question. Because the Midrash from a couple of thousand years ago already brings it up. The Midrash Zuta, chapter 1, section 7, teaches that when Nebuchadnezzar came to Yerushalayim, he was already expecting to destroy Yerushalayim in a short period of time. And he was surprised because the warriors that the Jewish people had superhuman powers. One of them was a person by the name of Akiva ben Naphtali, who would catch the boulders. These boulders literally weigh several tons each. They would fling these boulders to cause destruction, the equivalent of bombs today. This Akiva would catch it with one hand and throw it back at Nebuchadnezzar's army, causing massive destruction. After he got some training, the Midrash says, he was able to catch multiple boulders at the same time, even with his feet. He would catch a boulder with his foot and then kick it back to destroy Nebuchadnezzar and his army. In fact, the Midrash says that there were tzaddikim among Am Yisrael that were able to command different angels of fire to come down from heaven and destroy any enemy army. And all of the nations knew this, and therefore they didn't mess with us. But Nebuchadnezzar came. Why didn't these tzaddikim command the angels to do so? That's because they did try. They tried commanding the angels to come, as they always have, for different reasons. And for the first time ever, it didn't work. And that's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed that the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash will happen, and therefore he changed the names of the angels. So when they were commanding the angels to come, it didn't work. They were commanding the wrong names. After this, the uncle of Jeremiah, his name was Hananel. he invoked one of the names of Hashem to command angels to come from heaven and wage battle against the enemy. And when they came, the Assyrians ran away. But after Hashem changed the names, it didn't work anymore. So Hananel invoked the name of the archangel of the world, which allowed him to levitate the entire city of Yerushalayim in the air. So no enemy can reach us. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw this, he kicked out the archangel out of the heavens, and Yerushalayim crashed to the ground. This, Rabotai, is what we had walking among us. Believe or not believe, that's your problem. But these are the things that are in our holy books. Now, if you have such amazing people, why destroy? Why destroy? The Gemara in Masechet Gittin, page 57. Has testimony that Rabbi Chia bar Avin got from Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha, who got it from an old man who actually saw the destruction itself. And he said that when Nebuzaradan, the butcher who was in charge of Nebuchadnezzar's army, when he came, he slaughtered 2,110,000 people. Right at the beginning. And inside the Yerushalayim, he murdered 940,000 people on one spot. And there was so much blood that it went from town to town, literally. It became a little river. And it stopped at one place where there was a puddle of blood already. Nebuzaradan saw this blood pool, and he saw that this pool of blood is boiling. And he asked one of the prisoners, one of the Jewish prisoners, what is that? And the Jewish prisoner didn't want to tell him what it is. And he said, no, that's one of our sacrifices. What kind of sacrifice? Bring the sacrifices. He started slaughtering animals, and he saw, no, it's not the same blood. Either tell me, or I'm going to rip your flesh from your bones with iron combs while you're alive. Meaning he was as vicious as can possibly be, this Nebuzaradan. And the Jew tells him, what can I say? It's an embarrassment for us what that is. The truth is that boiling blood is already 2 years old. He was once a prophet named Zachariah in Hebrew. And he came to us and rebuked us of how our servitude of Hashem has become relaxed. We've become too modern. We're not serious about learning Torah. Too many leniencies. We didn't like hearing his rebuke. And he kept coming back. You know, like somebody today that has a YouTube channel where he's screaming for people to do tshuva. Like somebody that says, listen, don't invite Reshaim into your communities. Don't desecrate the Torah. We didn't like to hear it. We thought we were doing enough. So we killed him. And his blood has been boiling ever since. Nebuzaradan said in his mind, I will avenge his blood. And he started taking people and murdering them in that spot. He didn't just take anybody. First, he started with the Sanhedrin itself. Then the lesser Sanhedrin. And he murdered them there. But the blood continued to bubble. Then he took a bunch of young kids males, females, murdered all of them. The blood continued to bubble. He brought school kids, little babies, slaughtered them. The blood continued to bubble. Literally, tens and tens of thousands of Jews are being murdered in this spot. Nothing's happening. It continues to bubble. Nebuzaradan screamed into the sky, saying, Zechariah, Zechariah, I've wiped out the best of them. Do you want me to destroy all of them? And at that moment, the blood stopped. That's when Nebuzaradan realized what he has done. He had a moment of truth, and he realized that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed me to kill all of these people just to avenge the blood of one righteous person, what will be my end when Hashem has to avenge the blood of all the people that I just killed? He sent a suicide letter to his family as if he killed himself, and he actually abandoned the army, and he actually converted, says the Gemara. The point being here is we see that it wasn't that we didn't know Torah. That wasn't the problem. Is that we stopped accepting the truth. And any time a Jew rejects the truth, he brings punishment unto himself. And if we do it as a nation, even more so. The Yalkut Shimoni says in section 1016, says there was a woman who had 3 sons who were soldiers, while she stayed behind taking care of the baby of the family. The famine during the war and the starvation was so horrible that the woman didn't have anything to cook for her children when they came back from the war to eat. So she killed the baby and she cooked him. When his brothers came back and started eating, but they noticed there's something wrong here, and then they realized that they're actually eating their own brother, they all had such agony that they all went up to the roof and jumped to their death. They committed suicide. The prophet Jeremiah says in Eicha chapter 4 verse 9, those who were killed by the sword were better off than those who died of famine, because there's nothing more agonizing than dying by famine, and countless people died from famine. 50 years after the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, the city of Beitar was destroyed also on Tisha B'Av. And the Gemara in Masechet Gitin says that there was 80,000 squadrons of soldiers poured into Beitar and started killing the men, women, and children until the blood oozed through the doors of the pipe and the pipes. And the horses had blood reaching up to their noses. Anyone that's ridden a horse before realizes how tall a horse is. The blood from all the people that died literally made a river that had reached the noses of the horses. And it traveled 4 kilometers. A 4-kilometer river of blood, just so you understand. This is the reason why Tisha B'Av is a nightmare of all nightmares. The Rama in Sefer Torah Chatzot says that Nebuchadnezzar, after he destroyed the Bet HaMikdash, he wanted to show off to some of the elite. And the philosopher Plato was sent to Yerushalayim to see the glory of the destruction. And since there was a protection on the prophet Jeremiah, where no one was allowed to touch him, Nebuchadnezzar was friends with Jeremiah when he was young, and he says no one's allowed to touch him. So Jeremiah was there at the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, crying hysterically. When Plato saw him, he says, Are you the wisest of all the people of Israel, yet you're crying over lost wood and stones? Why are you crying over the past? A wise man doesn't cry over what has already happened. He goes ahead and he builds the future. Plato thought that his philosophy is going to work here. He also thought he's the smartest man in the world. The prophet Jeremiah says, are you the world's leading philosopher? You certainly have come across questions which you have found no answer. Is that so? And Plato says, yes, I have many such questions, but I believe that there is no one in the world that can answer them. Jeremiah says to him, try asking me those questions, all of them, and I will answer each and every single one of them to your satisfaction. Plato sat down and asked all of his questions. Jeremiah answered every single one of those questions in a single breath. He answered all of the questions at once, to the point where Plato did not believe that he's a human being. He literally believed that Jeremiah is an actual angel. He cannot be human. And then Jeremiah, after answering all of his questions, says to him, I want you to know that all of that wisdom that you are impressed by, I gained my wisdom from those very same wooden stones that have now been burned and destroyed. And as for your question in regards to why I cry over the past, I will not answer that, because it is too deep for you to fathom. Meaning, with all of your philosophical intellect, you still don't know the secret of tears, which even a Jewish child knows. The extraordinary wisdom that the Jewish people had did not stop them from sinning, though. Did not stop them from doing things that were forbidden. And unfortunately, this is the type of behavior that HaKadosh Baruch Hu warned Am Yisrael about over and over again, to no avail. Now, the question is, what does that have to do with now? In order to answer that, we'll first have to go back 200 years. So fast forward a couple thousand years from the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, but not quite to today. We're going to go back to the 1800s. In a book written some time ago, about 60 years ago, 50 years ago, called The History of Zionism. I believe that if this book was published today, or written today, no publishing house would want to publish it. They would view it as anti-Semitic. And one of the reasons is because it actually tells real history. History that often you're not going to hear from rabbis. And people like to forget, even if they remember. Anti-Semitism did not begin during the Holocaust. In fact, anti-Semitism has been standard throughout most of Jewish history. In Europe, until the French Revolution, the Jewish people were forbidden from being part of normal society. And while the rabbis, the Orthodox rabbis, liked this segregation and believed that it was a separation and a blessing, the ones that wanted to advance, that wanted to prosper, did not like this so much. In fact, they hated it, and they did everything possible to bring a enlightenment. One of the leaders of the Enlightenment movement was a wicked person named Moshe Mendelssohn, who said that as a Jew, my son could only become a physician, a trader, and a beggar. And he hated this. He wanted his son to be something else. And once the revolution began and the Jews were allowed to slowly enter into all types of commerce, there was only one thing that was holding them back, according to them at least, from being accepted by society like everybody else. And that was the fact that they were Jewish. And therefore it became a thing for Jews to abandon Judaism, and in fact hate it. And despite some of the restrictive laws, social assimilation made rapid progress during the early decades of the 19th century. Many Jews moved from the villages into large towns where they could find better living quarters. They sent their children to non-Jewish schools and modernized their religious service. And among the intellectuals, there was a growing conviction that a new Judaism, purged of medieval obscurism, was an intermediate stage towards enlightened Christianity. In so many words, many Jews believed that you have to abandon Judaism altogether and go and join the Christians, convert to Christian idolatry, in order to advance in life. And as the author writes here, I'm going to quote several things he says. This again, it's the book called The History of Zionism. He says, towards the middle of the 19th century, a person by the name of Gabriel Reiser, the most eloquent and courageous advocate of emancipation, suggested that a Jew who preferred a non-existent state and a nation, meaning Israel, over Germany, ought to be put under police protection, not because his views were dangerous, but because he was obviously insane. Meaning to view anything better than Germany, and even want a state like Israel, in his perspective, and he's a Jew, is insanity. And he didn't stop there. He actually wrote that whoever disputes my claim, this is the Gabriel Reiser, whoever disputes my claim to the German fatherland, he, on this occasion, disputes my right to my thought and feelings, to the language that I speak, the air that I breathe. He deprives me of my very right to existence, and therefore I must defend myself against him as I would against a murderer. Does this sound similar to some of you that watch some of this liberal media, lefty liberalism, and all of this other junk that's out there? Well, if it hasn't yet, wait till the rest of it sets in. Reiser summarizes philosophy, the spiritual marriage of Judaism and Germany, in a rhyme device, where he says, we have one Father in heaven and one Mother, God the Father of all beings, and Germany the mother on earth. One of the leading Orthodox rabbis in 1848 wrote about the young Jews of the time that 9/10 of them were ashamed of their faith. Statements like these were abound. They were perhaps not meant to be taken literally, but they indicated a general trend, says the author. And of Moshe Mendelssohn's children, all but one converted to Christianity. And many of his followers left Judaism and converted to Christianity. Another person by the name of Hain, who converted to Christianity, says baptism was an entrance ticket to European civilization. And who would let a mere formality stand between me and a European civilization? Meaning, for him, converting to Christianity, Catholicism, was simply a necessary step, like getting a college degree today. Now, if this was only the few that did it, then this would be good news. But unfortunately, this became a standard. In fact, young women and older women joined this ideology, started opening all types of houses where they would literary salons in Berlin and Vienna. Some of the famous women were Rachel Varnhagen, Henriette Ertz, Dorothea Schlegel, Fanny Arnstein. These were some of the primary hostesses at the time, and they entertained all types of famous people, statesmen, generals, princes, poets. Anybody that was anybody would come to their places. And of course, these platonic and not so platonic, as the author says, affairs of these ladies were very ridiculous. There was an element of madness in the general malaise of the Romantic age, but there was nothing specifically Jewish about these places or this time. All the great Berlin hostesses eventually became Christians. Mendelssohn's daughter, Dorothy, converted first to Protestantism and then, following the Romantic fashion, to Catholicism. His other daughter, Henriette Hertz, said about her father, Moshe Mendelssohn, that he possessed virtues of a Christian. For Rachel Varnhagen, she hated Judaism so much that she would often say that the fact that she was born Jewish was the biggest tragedy of her life. As if a dagger penetrated her heart the moment that she was born. She considered it a disgrace to her life, a suffering, a misfortune. In so many words, the standard Jew in Europe hated Judaism no less than the anti-Semites. Self-hating Jews was not a new thing of this generation. As the Jewish middle class started to rise, the attitude towards Judaism itself worsened. In 1899, the person by the name of Fontaine wrote that intermarriage between Jews and non-Jews became a mass phenomenon. And few people noted because it was regarded as perfectly natural, and nobody made a fuss about it, meaning intermarriage became standard, similar to how it is today in America and in Canada and in England and in pretty much everywhere there are Jews today. The Jasons of 1825 were all Hegelians, at least for a while. Hegel wrote that Judaism was the world of the wretched, the misfortune, ugliness, a world lacking inner unity and harmony. These Jews were ashamed of their origin. Rachel Vargan said that she liked to study Jena because there were so few Jews around. Another person by the name of Bourne reported that in his university there was very few Jews and none of them would ever walk next to each other. They would all hide that they're Jewish. It got to the point that in Berlin, one of the compliments that you can give a Jew is that there was nothing specifically Jewish about him. This is over 100 years before the Holocaust. And I know that some of you are surprised that it's not today. But it is today. With the growing social and cultural differentiation inside the community, the more educated were more often ashamed of their less fortunate co-religionists, who were less assimilated than themselves, but with whom they were nevertheless identified in the public mind. In so many words, the Jews that have abandoned Judaism, call them secular Jews, or Jews that have adopted Christianity, hated religious Jews. Exactly what's happening in Israel right now and in other places around the world. There is such a hatred between the secular Jew and the religious Jew right now that the secular Jews literally believe that the things that were said about the Jewish people in Mein Kampf were only relevant to the religious Jews, which is the exact opposite, actually. Some of the things they're saying literally on radio stations in Israel, some of the things that are being said here in America by Jews. We're not talking about anti-Semites that are American, Nazis. No. We're talking about Jews speaking about other Jews. Even Jews like Modi that considers himself religious. What he actually says about Judaism and the Torah. These types of statements are not different than what was said a couple of 100 years ago. They would literally warn each other from associating with religious Jews. You must be careful not to look at them or take an interest in them, as if religious Jews were like a plague of some kind. One of the future socialist leaders, a person by the name of LaSalle, said that he loathed the Jews. So much so that he considered them degenerates, descendants of slaves, with mentality of slaves, who were only created to be slaves, cowardly people, who don't deserve a better lot because you were born to be servants. This is what he felt about his fellow Jews. But interestingly enough, the vast majority of these people converted to Christianity. Bourne was baptized. Hein converted after writing one of his closest friends that he wouldn't convert, but he converted nonetheless. But then later on, he wrote that he regretted converting, and he was hated by the Christians and the Jews alike, meaning the conversion didn't help him. Now, it's often said that the worst happened in Germany. There's no real statistics that you can guarantee, but the author brings that there were actually more conversions of Jews to Christianity in England, in Russia, and in Austria, and Hungary, than even in Germany. Meaning, as bad as the situation was in Germany, with the intermarriage, according to some statistics in PU research, that there was literally nearly 90% intermarriage in Germany, the situation was even worse in England, in Russia, in Austria. Some people said that literally half the people in Berlin converted to Christianity, meaning half the Jews. Regardless, the author says the most gifted Jews in every walk of life, and above all the leaders, the intelligentsia, those that attain social status, economic, political status, prominence, nearly all of them converted to Christianity. In some communities, almost all of the leading families converted. Often the parents would hesitate to convert, but they would baptize their kids. The theologian Schleiermacher announced that Judaism was dead, while his colleague von Schroetel, who was a Prussian minister, said, no, it's not dead yet. Give it 20 years. They're dead. We're still here, Baruch Hashem. The ultimate goal of all of these Jews, nearly 100 years before the Holocaust, was to Europeanize Judaism by purging it from its roots. Some of them were suggesting to ban Hebrew and the Talmud, things that even the biggest anti-Semites have not suggested. And even if they suggested, they didn't succeed. This was coming from Jews, Rabotai. This was coming from Jews. I know that the anti-Semites are going to have a field day. But let them have a field day while we learn the truth of what got us to the point of destruction. This doesn't justify the evil of those that killed us, and our brothers and our grandparents. But needless to say, we have to know that there is a din and there's a dayan. There's a judge and there's a judgment. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not allow Esav to hurt Yaakov unless Yaakov acts like Esav. One of the followers of Mendelssohn, a person by the name of Ben Siv, complained that Hebrew was disappearing. And he blamed this on the parents that abandoned Judaism and their conservative rabbis. The parents wanted their children to learn only subjects that would assist them in a professional career. Languages, mathematics, sciences. Does that sound familiar? You go to yeshiva today? Yeah. So you're going to become an avrech? No. My parents want me to go to college. They want me to be a doctor. Okay, fine. You could be a doctor, but why don't you go learn Torah for another few years? Not to go be a doctor. No. My parents want me to be an engineer. Okay, fine. You could be an engineer, but why don't you learn a few hours a day? No. My parents are paying a lot of money for tuition, so I could become an astronaut. I could become an accountant. I could become everything but a Talmid Chacham. Why don't you become a Talmid Chacham? No, they don't make enough money. Said it, but you said you like Torah. Yeah, but my parents said that I need to make money. I literally have kids crying to me, telling me that they want to learn Torah, but their parents won't let them. Their parents are forcing them to go into a career. And then the parents are going to cry when that career doesn't bring any salvation. This is not the first time. 200 years ago, 100 years before the Holocaust, same thing was done by parents back then, Jewish parents back then, forcing their kids to go to school in order to learn all types of subjects that would help them in a professional career and stay away from Torah. The Orthodox rabbis at the time certainly acted the opposite. They banned worldly subjects altogether because the science was not taught for the sake of objectivity in education, but rather for the sake of destroying Judaism. And while at the time of Mendelssohn, Jews still considered themselves a Jewish nation, a few years later, the Jews started referring to themselves as a Mosaic confession. In so many words, people that are connected to Moses. And the religious reform movement gathered momentum. Throughout the first half of the century, they changed the Siddur. So much so that the national, rather than the religious content, that those of national rather than religious content were referring to the coming of the Moshiach were deleted. Anything relating to Moshiach, they deleted. So the prayers we have about in a morning blessings or in a Shachrit, Ubal Etzion Goel Shevet Pesha B'Yakov, the Reform rabbis removed it from the Siddur. What they replace the statements of Moshiach with? They started bringing organs and all types of musical instruments into the synagogue, or they started calling them temples instead of synagogue. They started giving the girls and boys a confirmation, which is something that Jews do not do. The Reform rabbis went against the Orthodox rabbis and dropped completely the issues of mikveh and even the mourning and funeral process of Judaism. Some even changed the religious services from Shabbat to Sunday, like the Christians, and started telling the parents, the Jewish parents, they don't need to circumcise their kids anymore if they don't want to. Why deform the kid? And if that wasn't enough, they started singing Christian songs in these temples, lighting candles of the Hanukkah candelabra while having a Christmas tree next to it. By the 1850s and 60s, these Enlightenment movement types of people were happy because they felt that they reached equality with Germany and Austria and Hungary and Italy and Scandinavia. They felt that they had civil equality. By 1858, the first British Jew entered the parliament, and by 1870, Jews were allowed to attend English universities. There was still some anti-Semitism, but not as public as the previous century. And the Jewish community, or Jewish people that lived next to each other, felt that they were truly enlightened. Success. They were optimistic. They were prospering. They started acquiring great riches. They started going into all forms of business and industry. All types of professions. And by 1905, less than 5% of the population of Berlin were Jews, but yet they provided 30% of the municipal tax revenue, meaning the Jews became extraordinarily wealthy. 5% of the population, 30% of the taxes. If I was reading this in a newspaper today about America, not a single person would doubt it. Not a single person would question it. History is repeating itself. Now, although I've said this in the past, unfortunately, not enough people have heard it. I believe more anti-Semites have heard my message than Jews. Some anti-Semites actually have abandoned their ways and actually adopted a good lifestyle, following the Torah, either as righteous Noahides and even in a couple of cases, converting to Judaism. Some anti-Semites continued in their wicked ways. And their end will be no different than Nebuchadnezzar and the rest of the wicked people that lived throughout history that went against the Jewish people. But if that was the goal, then we would have already achieved it. It's not. The goal is to wake up our brothers and sisters from their slumber and to make them realize that screaming Mashiach now is not going to help a single person. Because as loud as you scream Mashiach and as many dances and songs you come up with about Mashiach, he's not going to help those people that continue the same behavior that has led to our destruction in the past. Before the Holocaust, the situation that the Jewish world had as far as money was at its best. Everything that I just read was from 100 years to just literally right before the Holocaust. In so many words, the ultimate success of the Jewish people, financially, politically, socially, was right before the near complete annihilation of every single Jew alive. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had mercy on the Jewish people during the Holocaust. He didn't annihilate all of them. We had tzaddikim in the world that protected us. When Mussolini and General Rommel were preparing to conquer Egypt and then Eretz Yisrael, we had tzaddikim like Rabbi Yehuda gather a group of Mekubalim, Kabbalists, and do all types of prayers and tikkunim. Even at one point, doing kaparot in the air, going into a helicopter and flying around the entire border of Israel in order to plead with God not to allow these Nazis to enter Eretz Yisrael and kill all of us. And Baruch Hashem, it worked. But this didn't save every Jew. 6 million Jews murdered. Many more millions died a spiritual death as a result of their abandoning Judaism, either due to their lack of education about Judaism before the Holocaust, or simple disregard to it after. And the mentality of the self-hating Jew continued to evolve, so much so that you actually have some people call themselves modern Orthodox Jews, like this woman that was interviewed by Modi, who went to Yeshiva University, How a woman attends a yeshiva, I don't know, but apparently yeshiva university is not really a yeshiva. And according to the New York State laws, it's not really considered a religious institution either. But how a person can go to a so-called religious Jewish school, but then publicly state how much she hates Judaism and all of the laws, has complete disregard to it. And Modi, the comedian, doesn't take advantage of the opportunity like a real Jew, but rather joins her by saying he also disagrees with much of the law and reinterprets the law himself on live radio or podcast or whatever it was. But he has no problem going to the Chabad house and other synagogues that he's a part of. They're still going to accept him, they're still going to welcome him, and still going to invite him to yeshivot to speak and to make people laugh. Meaning that today, our problem is no longer the reform mentality and even those that go to a different religion. Our biggest problem is people that are completely ignorant to Judaism altogether, similar to the past, to the point where they're just disconnected, and not enough people caring about bringing them back, or people within our own communities, call it modern, call them Hasidish, call them whatever you want to call them, that have heretical mentalities, heretical ideologies, in line with the same ideologies that led to a near annihilation of the entire Jewish people. Every single time it happened. Now, while everybody's going to say, listen, Moshiach now, and everyone's going to say, be optimistic, and everyone's going to say a lot of things, let's check a few things. If you're really ready for Mashiach. The Gemara says in Masechet Avodah Zarah, in the first chapter, that once Mashiach comes, there's no more conversion. But some communities already forbid conversion now, and have been for a long time. Apparently, Mashiach arrived in those communities. I haven't seen that Mashiach yet. But apparently, he arrived in those communities. The new Sefer by Rabbi Ephraim has multiple subjects in it. One of them is Kuntres Agerim, talking about converts, how great they are, how it's a gift to Am Yisrael from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have converts, where he takes the best of the nations and gives them as a gift to his children. But yet converting to Judaism is unnecessarily difficult in some communities and impossible in others. Even if the people are studious, even if the people have the money, even if the people are doing whatever is necessary, still some make it difficult for no reason. The second part of Rabbi Ephraim's book is Ocheach Tochiach. You must rebuke. In the average community, if you tell people to be quiet while there's prayers in the shul, they'll yell at you for telling them to be quiet. And the rabbi will tell you, no one's allowed to rebuke in this generation, as if there was a mitzvah from the Torah removed, chas v'shalom. The next section is Kuntres HaShoah. Many Jews have this question, where was God during the Holocaust? And only a few are willing to answer them the truth, which is that, what do you mean, where was God during the Holocaust? He's the one that did it. That's the answer. There is no other answer. No, but it's bad, so it must be something else. No. Believing it's anything else other than God punishing us is 100% heresy. Why? No one can help you or hurt you individually or nationally other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Satan is simply one of the messengers that HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses. Malach Gabriel, Malach Michael, Malach Raphael, they all have jobs. There's all types of messengers, all types of employees that HaKadosh Baruch Hu have, servants. They do Hashem's will. No one does anything against Hashem's will. Where was God during the Holocaust? Where were the Jewish people before the Holocaust? We just learned. The Jewish people abandoned God well before HaKadosh Baruch Hu tried to remind them who He is. Kuntras Gehenom. The average rabbi tells you that Gehenom is simply embarrassment, or if you listen to Modi, Gehenom doesn't exist according to Judaism. Worst case scenario, if you're a sinner, you just come back to this life again. So why don't you just do whatever you want? You could commit every heinous crime under the sun, and the worst case scenario is you're just going to get another life. It's like a video game. What is this, Super Mario Brothers? You're going to go chase, and then you fall, so that you get another chance again? That's the world of God? This is the magnificent God that you believe in? You're just going to get endless amount of chances no matter what you do. No punishment, no suffering. This world has suffering. This world has agony. This world has Holocaust. This world has pedophilia. This world has disease. This world has the most horrific things you can imagine. But no, the upper world is lesser than this, according to Modi. You could be a Hitler, you could be a criminal, and God won't punish you. He'll actually give you another chance, no matter what. Rabbi Modi, you're fired. And whoever taught you this, you should perhaps go back to yeshiva, learn real Torah, because what you said is 100% apikosut. The average Jew does not know that Judaism believes in Gehenom and that there are literally countless books, countless chachamim, 5,000 to 6,000 sources that I know of at least, to discuss the details of Gehenom. This book only has 50 pages about it. That's it. Do you know how, if we took all the sources about the teachings of the afterlife, literally, the city would end. There would be enough space. But the average Jew doesn't hear any talk about it. Why? Because they want to pretend like there is no suffering. God only rewards. They turned the Creator into a vending machine, into a Santa Claus, into some video game, into some demented mentality that they have that simply rewards no matter what. And the Ramban in Shara Gmul says, people that think like that turned God into an evil God, because a God that doesn't punish is an evil God. Think about that for a second. In order to be good, there must be punishment. There must be a reward and punishment system. If you are a parent that only rewards the kid, you are a horrible, horrible parent. If you are a teacher that only rewards, you are a terrible teacher. Why? There must be a reward and punishment system. And you say, okay, but why does it have to be so bad? Why can't the punishment be something small? The greater the crime, the greater the punishment. Even a normal human being would understand that. If you commit a crime against your loved one, there's a certain type of punishment. If you commit crime against an important person, there's a different punishment. If you commit a crime against a king, certainly a different punishment. If you commit a crime against the King of Kings, certainly a different level of punishment. When the average Jew does not know what Gehenom is, what hell is, and thinks that it's a Christian belief, that means that they've literally know more about Christianity than they know about Judaism. And this problem is not just in the secular world. This problem is everywhere. Last but not least, this awesome sefer has a section about a halachic tshuva, about the cash advance business. The business that is the root of destruction time and time again throughout the generations. I'm working on translating this tshuva to English. And B'ezrat Hashem will publish it separately. And when it's an halachic tshuva, it's not a standard translation. It takes a lot more effort and time. But I can tell you this. Whatever I said in lectures about the cash advance business, and as horrible as it is, it's actually much worse. Now, the Chachamim didn't just bring their halachic considerations about whether you should or you shouldn't be in a lending business or not. They brought history. And I'll give you a couple of sections I worked on just in the last couple of days, where you literally see how this has been a tragedy for the Jewish people. Now, of course, the cash advance business, charging interest, high interest, is not just a Jewish thing. There are plenty of non-Jews in the business. But the fact that there's a single Jew, needless to say, a religious Jew in the business is already one too many. The fact that there is many religious Jews in the cash advance business and similar types of operations with rabbis supporting it here in America and in other places shows literally how close we are to another Holocaust. The behavior of 200 years ago, we already have confirmed, is identical to America today, identical to Canada today, identical to England today, identical to Australia today, identical to Jewish communities in Israel, literally, identical. What about business? In the Sefer Derech HaMelech, by Rabbi Finkelstein, on page 63, there he noted research by a Y. Rosenthal. Y. Rosenthal Research and Sources in a Jerusalem 5727. So figure almost 60 years ago. Page 265. So in this Sefer Derech HaMelech, he says, anyone that's knowledgeable in human history will see clearly the accuracy of these words, where researchers have shown that throughout the period, the last couple of hundred years, and throughout all of history from the Middle Ages until now, anti-Semites of different stripes cheated the Jews and attacked them because some Jews believe that we're allowed to, it's a mitzvah to lend non-Jews money with interest. Meaning that this belief that many people publicize, that Jews are allowed to charge interest to non-Jews, has actually been a tool that the anti-Semites have used to hate us. In fact, Rav Ovadia writes in Alichot Olam and also in Maaseh Ovadia, in Alichot Olam in volume 8, Parashat Vayitchanan, Amud 6, And in Maaseh Ovadia, in page 380, he brings the commentary on the Kerem Shlomo. And he says that Jews should stay away from lending money with interest, even outside of Israel, due to the many negative decrees that were declared against us over the generations. And he says that this is true even in countries which call themselves democracies or democratic, because more than once we've seen that they have passed laws against the Jews under various strange and twisted justifications. May Hashem have mercy. And in these circumstances, there's certainly no room for permission to lend money with interest for Jews. To non-Jews. To anybody. The Gaon, Rabbi Yechezkel Landau, in his Sefer, Drashot Hatzlach, publication by Machon Hatzlach, Elad edition, on page 539. He warned about this danger of Jewish people lending money with interest. And he writes as follows: it's forbidden to lend with interest to those nations whom we live in their shadow and treat us favorably. They are people of faith, believers of the blessed Creator, and the Torah of Moshe came from heaven. Anyone, he's referring to the Jewish people, anyone who takes interest from the nations in our times, more than the norm in the markets of that country, is committing two evils. One, the very fact of taking interest payments itself is evil, and furthermore, he is in the category of a rodef, who is among those who put the Jewish people in danger by giving us a bad image in the eyes of the nations. It is appropriate for us to follow the attributes of the Holy One, blessed be He, who desires kindness. But as a result of our many sins, continues Rav Landau, the wicked people act the opposite of this instruction. As Shlomo HaMelech says in Proverbs 12:10, the mercy of the wicked is cruelty. We can clearly see that those people who lend money with interest initially seem to be an act of compassion and lending money to the poor in his time of distress. However, in the end, we see that this is an evil and cruel dispensation. This lender increases the interest and makes things tougher on the borrowers with biting interest. Eventually, the poor man simply cannot bear it, and the lender comes to take away all the poor man's property as part of his interest obligations. These are the words of Rabbi Yechezkel Landau. Similarly, brings a Rabbi Freiman in Sefer, Rav Michael HaKohen Baruch narrates in his book called Zichron Av Ubno, page 334 and 335, his own memories of his life when he lived in Ukraine, in a place called Columbia. And he tells of how there were certain Jewish personalities who took high interest, even more than the value of the principal amount, meaning over 100% interest, and they caused a lot of animosity towards the Jews by the non-Jews. 100% in cash advance is cheap, because some of them are charging 600-700%, and even some as high as 4,000%. But here he's talking about how this interest of 100% caused anti-Semitism in Ukraine. If that was enough, this would be sufficient. But there's more. In Morocco, Sefer Kovetz Asufot, volume 15, page 95, an historian by the name of Eliezer Bashan came to the conclusion in his book that there was a certain degree of justification to the hatred that the locals had towards the Jewish population in Morocco, in Fez, Morocco. This was due to those Jews who were on the other one hand enjoying the hospitality of the foreign nation, meaning Morocco, but yet on the other hand, they were lending them money with high interest. Even the rabbi of Fez, of Morocco at the time, from 1873 to 1900, also agreed and joined in holding these Jews at fault. Meaning this is not just a lone historian that is agreeing with the Gentile perspective. No, the rabbi of Morocco agreed that these wicked Jews are causing anti-Semitism. So whether it's Morocco, or it's Ukraine, or it's Poland, or it's Germany, or it's anywhere in history, you saw Jews lend money with interest, it creates anti-Semitism. And unfortunately, one of the businesses that many people are going to today is this rotten business. Why? Because the Yetzer Hara pays cash. The Satan pays cash. And a lot of it. People think that they're going to do good. And therefore they'll be able to give tzedakah. I can assure you, not a single dollar that you donate from that business is considered tzedakah. It's all considered stolen. Every single person in that business, even if you're a clerk, even if you do the paperwork, if you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant for them, if you're a secretary, needless to say, if you're a broker, a principal, compliance officer, and an owner, every single one of those people is bringing anti-Semitism to the world. Every single one of them is increasing the power of Amalek, and some of them are even part of Amalek. And worse of it all, any rabbi that takes money from those people, knowing that this is where they get their money from, without saying anything, without stopping it, without at least rebuking the guy, and trying to get him to do tshuva, you are a partner to the crime. Why? By you taking money from these criminals, you're in essence enabling them to continue doing evil. If you are in a horrible, spiritually deformed business, whether it's the cash advance business or any other business, if you're cheating your customers, if you are cheating anybody, if you're stealing, if you're being dishonest, if you're a dishonest doctor, you're a dishonest lawyer, you're dishonest in anything, you are empowering Amalek. You are bringing a Holocaust to the Jewish people. Don't blame the non-Jews for being evil. They're simply being used as a tool by Hashem to get us to do tshuva. Why does Hashem use them? Because of people like you that steal from them, that empower them. This doesn't justify their sins, doesn't allow them to cause us any harm. But it's important for the Jewish people to know this is not a new thing. Anti-Semitism being on the rise is not a new thing. More than 50% of Americans have already admitted that they hate the Jewish people. That's just 50% that admit. Who knows about the other 50% that hasn't admitted yet? That means there's between 175 to 200 million people in America alone that hate Jews. Needless to say, the people around the world, they have all the reasons in the world to not hate us, but you're giving them a reason to hate us. We've invented amazing things. We've brought amazing things to the world, whether it be technology, medicine, all types of innovation, all types of things, most importantly, religion. But you with your rotten greed, whether it's in your cash advance business or your corrupt other operation, are giving the non-Jews a reason to hate the Jews. No, it's not because of the religious Jews like me that the non-Jews hate us. In fact, even anti-Semites like us. In fact, even anti-Semites write comments under my videos and say, you know what, you make me respect the real Jews. Now I know there's a difference. Guess what? Just because someone is religious doesn't mean they're a real Jew. And just because someone's not religious doesn't mean they're a fake Jew. If you are cheating the non-Jews, you are the cause of the next Holocaust, the next destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. You are destroying the Bet HaMikdash every day. As Chazal teach us, every day that the Bet HaMikdash has not been built, that's because we destroyed it. Meaning, if it was here today, Hashem would destroy it today. Anytime you cheat, it's a sin. But when you cheat a non-Jew, it's even worse than cheating a Jew. Because he no longer blames you, he blames Judaism. It's a chilul Hashem. So whether you're cheating, stealing, or simply causing agony to the non-Jews, wherever they may be, in one business or another, you have to understand, you are the problem. You are the problem. It's time to do tshuva. Don't tell me Moshiach now. Moshiach is not going to help people like you. Moshiach will destroy people like you that empowered Amalek. Many of our communities don't speak about stuff like this because there's money involved, because there's reputations involved, because of all types of flawed reasons. We have to understand this distance that the people have from Judaism today is not because they know so much about Judaism and they decide they don't like it, but quite the opposite. Because the average person, the average Jew, is not given a real Jewish education, even if they sometimes go to yeshiva. They smell, the kids of this generation smell the dishonesty in the air. They ask rabbis basic questions about reward and punishment. They can't get a legit answer. They ask different people about different types of things. They can't get a normal answer. We are all at fault here. Instead of crying about a building that was destroyed 2,000 years ago, perhaps we should start crying until we change today. Until we fix our behaviors today. Now, while everybody has an excuse of why they're not so ready to be a Talmid Chacham and study Torah all day, fine. Can you at least keep the basics of mitzvot? And you know what? We'll make it even easier. Can you at the very least be honest in your business? Be honest in your ethics? Be honest with your morality? Stop chasing all types of things that are forbidden, all types of things that don't belong to you. All of these liberals claim to be decent people, while decency has a completely different definition than what they think it is. If there's an ounce of decency in any one of us, we have to start seeing what the truth is instead of defining it. This is the truth. This is where I go. Don't redefine the truth. Don't rationalize the truth. Don't modernize the truth. The truth of Judaism has been around for over 3,300 years. And any time we try to modernize it, we try to improvise it, we try to do all types of things to steer away from it, a disaster was what happened. The Jewish people need more truth. Needless to say, the whole world does. Instead of trying to redefine what the truth is supposed to be according to your desires, look at the truth that worked. Look at the truth by the ultimate giver of truth, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who has a signature that says emet, truth. Now, if you can't follow all of it right away, at the very least, don't continue disgraceful behavior of saying that perhaps the truth should change. The truth is the truth. And whatever else you're doing is simply not. Instead of us crying about a building, instead of us crying about a Moshiach, instead of us crying about all types of things that most people cannot even fathom, no more than Plato can fathom the secret of tears. Instead of crying about all of those, let's cry about the things we can do something about. Let's reform the things that we can reform. Reform our business practices to be in line with honesty. Reform our spiritual practices to be in line with halacha. Reform our mindsets to be with the ideology of the sages. Reform our sense of truth to be in line with the Torah itself and the Creator that created truth. You want to reform? Reform back to the truth. And see the destruction will no longer happen. Not to us and anyone else that loves us, but only to our haters, only to our enemies. Instead of crying about some things that the average person does not understand, let's cry about those people that never got a chance to even hear the truth once in their life. Cry enough for Hashem to have mercy, for them to get an opportunity to hear the truth once and for all. Because when they do, if there is 1 ounce of their body that is Jewish, they'll jump at that truth and abandon all lies. The only people that stick to lies are people that love lies, because it simply enables them to be wicked, even if they pretend to be righteous. You want to reform? Reform back to the truth. It's a much better system. God signed off on it. Thank you for learning with me. May Hashem bless each and every single one of us to have success in the reformation of our own ideologies, personalities, religiosity, business, and everything that we have, to be in line with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's will. And may Hashem give each and every single one of us the wherewithal to encourage our communities to do the same. Once we do that, we will finally be the light of the nations. Kol Tuv, B'cha B'atzlacha, and we'll speak again and learn again tomorrow.
If you don't have $1,000 by the end of the week, an additional 1,000 than what we have already in the bank, forget about paying the mortgage. There's no food for Shabbos. No worry, Hashem will look after me. She goes, what, you're brainwashed, you're listening to Rabbi Reuven too much. This is enough, this is too much. Trust me, Hashem will look after me. He never let me down. I went to shul and I happened to get an Aliyah that morning. After the Aliyah, I go down to the office and I have my debit card. Please swipe my card for $100. And I told my wife, she went ballistic. You gave $100 to tzedakah now? You fool, you should have been asking them for tzedakah. You'll see Hashem is never going to let us down. At that time, I just found a job. It was a very slow week, and it was just starting that company, and I was paid hourly. I was expecting a check for like $300 for that week. It was a very slow week. I get a check in the mail for my salary 2 days later with $1,300. Exactly the $1,000 to the penny that my wife said I needed. And I say to the company, I think you made a mistake. I said, oh, no, Mr. Arya. We do not make mistakes over here. We decided that we love the way you work and we want to give you a bonus just out of the blue, show you our appreciation, and gave me an extra 1,000 just like that. I went home, I left the check on the table to show my wife, look, here's your $1,000.